And so, the same is true in the way of nobility. And so, the struggle between King Elon, and the blue checks is very like the struggle between, the king and the nobles.
Yeah.
Old Twitter, you had a weak king. And, the king was in the hands of the nobility, of the oligarchy. He was a figurehead. He was a pawn. The bureaucrats were in charge. Now you have a new king who's determined to be king. But, the thing is, he's the king only of Twitter and not, unfortunately, of the world. And he has a lot to learn, for when the king goes up against the nobility. He can't abolish the nobility. What he has to do is something much more subtle. He has to make them his. And so, when the king comes in, and, there was something very valuable about the blue checks. They identified these people. It was useful. I don't use Twitter. I don't have a Twitter account. I just browse on the web, when I can, when that power is activated. And I find the blue check very useful because I know what I'm looking at.
Yes.
It conveys meaning to me, the reader, not even to the poster. I don't care about having a blue check. It conveys a kind of meaning that this is a member of a very arbitrarily constructed aristocracy, but like formalizing that aristocracy and saying, who wears this blue check? Who wears? It's a sort of, if I may I be a little politically incorrect? The blue check is a sort of yellow star. To both sides, it identifies who these people are. And now it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It might as well not be displayed,
Yes, if I may interrupt, the reason many frogs, and not just frogs, all kinds of people choose to buy the blue check now is because it, at least perception, it gives some protection from arbitrary banning. If Elon did what you say and kept the old system, but at least afforded people protection from this kind of capricious banning, and especially if he got rid of the rule of lèse-majesté against blue checks and journalists, which was introduced after Trump won. And that's what really ruined Twitter, because why was Twitter good? Because people could come into the mentions.
You could talk back to these people. You could speak to your betters, right?
Yes.
And then it was the banning of Milo for making fun of this Michelle Obama type.
Yeah.
Your tweet with the Japanese royal family.
Yeah, the Onibaba. Yeah.
This was a new thing, and it went downhill from there. I mean, you were speaking of 2009 earlier. I remember even, as late as 2013, I would say, well, in theory, we need better free speech internet, yada, yada. But, of course, you can say anything you want on Twitter. You can say anything you want on Blogger. It was sort of no one cared. And then this sort of, thing springs up. I love Elon, but he's a boomer. As someone born in 1970s, I've worked very hard not to be a boomer. Yeah. Most of my friends are younger. My woman is younger.
Yes, this is power.
There's a certain level of, for a man, there's a certain level of it's a kind of success that happens. And the first time your woman is mistaken for your daughter.
No, this is good. Yeah. Well, she won't listen to show. It's all right.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, you have this nobility, and your goal, you cannot abolish the nobility. Your goal is to master it. And there's a couple of things wrong with the legacy blue check. First of all, the new blue check, you might as well call it, Twitter Pro, showing those blue checks to when reading tweets is absolutely useless. They mean nothing. It's visual clutter.
Yeah.
It tells you nothing about this person. As I read your Twitter, I have no interest in whether you're a blue check or not. That use of blue checks, it shows that Elon is a boomer in a way, because what he's really trying to say with the new blue checks is, I'm not a bot.
Yeah.
And, the reality is on Twitter, bots are not a real problem.
I disagree with that particular part, but I can tell you more in a moment. I mean, I agree with what you're saying about Elon. I know people who know him, and they all say he has very similar personality dysfunctions to Trump. I don't know.
And that's in that kind of position, your attention span grows very short. As a reader of Twitter, I read, I don't tweet. I've never even considered thinking of a problem with bots. I don't read posts by bots.
Spam is incredible, though. It is, and it's not just business spam. It's, at least previously, there were these blue checks that you mentioned, the legacy blue checks. They regularly used bots to boost themselves and many other such things. I mean, I have GOP, I cannot use naughty words, but GOP pathics, let's say GOP pathics, who are regularly trying to, quote-unquote, correct the record and do disruption radical networks and so on in my mentions. And periodically, it's completely artificial. Every few months, there's like 300 spam replies. And, it's obviously, I don't know if it's the DeSantis, the Negro campaign or what, but it's something like that, some outfit like that who's doing this. And
this, I believe, the mentions, whatever, that's like, sort of should be an internal thing for the poster. But, I'm in a unique position because I only consume content on Twitter. I don't produce. And
yes.
So as a consumer, bots are, a non-issue.
Yes.
And so that check saying you're not a bot, dear Elon, I know that Bronze Age pervert is not a bot. I don't need the visual clutter.
As far as I know, if I may say gossip on Elon, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mo, but yes, and I should tell the audience that I don't usually drink when recording, but with a guest it's different. So I'm half a bottle of champagne in. So excuse if I'm being indiscreet. But I hear from people close to Elon that in the beginning, after he took over, he half or 75% listened to his Silicon Valley billionaire friends. But that recently, for whatever reason, he's cut them off. He no longer listens to their suggestions regarding Twitter. And so I don't know if this mistake he's doing today with the scraping and the rate limiting is related to that or who's giving him advice. I can tell the audience, I know, well, basically for sure, 98% without having access to documents that Moldbug, we were going to talk this on the show. We have time. We're going to talk it later. But there is some kind, whether a sincere, traditional, conservative tradcon or some federale traditional so-called internet Catholic, giving Elon all kinds of bad advice, which is why of the frogs, I was unbanned, I think because certain people in that world like me and asked for me to be unbanned. I don't know. But,
yes, I believe.
But my friends have not been unbanned, and not one person in Frog Twitter from original, whether it's Mena, I guess quite a few others, including Inkblot, who was extreme popular account on our site, who simply posted animal videos, and he's permanently banned and hounded off the internet. And meanwhile, Elon is bringing back all the most noxious, face lords, let me put it that, the face fags, the people who went to Charlottesville, the most noxious sort of organizational ones, they're all unbanned. And I can tell the audience this for the first time. Michael Jones, who I have nothing against, I know I have friends who like him, he was unbanned the day Elon took office, took over Twitter, that is, but without Elon's knowledge at all. And ever since then, the same group of, the whole people around the Kanye campaign, the Charlottesville thing, all the most noxious, aggressive face fags, the people that the feds love because they entrap people in these idiotic public rallies, they're all coming back. But none of the smart, witty, humorous frogs are coming back. We're all,
Yes. There's something rotten there. And if I step back a minute, there's an old aristocracy and a new aristocracy. And the real mission, if I were in charge of, Twitter sort of socially, I think, part of the problem is this sort of vision of, the free speech internet, the like intellectual dork web.
Yeah.
Those sorts of people, 90s libertards. And I was a 90s libertard. I know 90s libertardism well. I respect, right? But you have to get with the program and and your job to be king. It's like to be a social king in a way, and so you have to basically both constrain the old aristocracy and tame it really. And the blue check was a critical tool in taming these people, or it could have been a critical tool in taming the legacy blue checks. There's much disorder. And, I know people, they got a blue check because, they were at a party with someone who could give it to them. Some came through bribes. It was very disruptive. But, if the king basically has a fight with the nobility, with all the counts and dukes and so forth, and if he says tomorrow, okay, there are no more counts and dukes.
Yes.
Everybody's no sir, no lord, everybody's just mister.
Yes.
The reality is there's still counts and dukes. And if he sells, then he sells, countships and dukedoms and so forth for £8 a month. Yeah, these people are still not counts and dukes. The great thing about old Twitter is that, in the darkness, this new aristocracy, the frog aristocracy, the sort of dark, invisible aristocracy, flourished, and it grew strong.
Yes.
And then later, its enemies began to oppress it. The capital, I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. and the capital of Twitter is reputation capital.
Yes.
And the reputation capital is not yours as CEO. Charging money to your best content producers makes no sense. You should earn more money off of them than they produce.
Yes.
But you should earn money off of their content and, perhaps even share that money with them. That is one thing he is doing that could be good. But, to basically fine them for existing, this also makes no sense.
Yeah.
You want to, take these people and perhaps even formalize this blue check even more. You say, okay, you have a legacy blue check. Why do you have it? Come in, apply for this. Let's confirm that you're really a noble, you're really a journalist, you're really a notable person, a person
Yes.
of note. And then you have this kind of aristocracy. And then, what you want to do is you want to say, okay, but there is this other aristocracy that flourishes next to it, and you have all of these different kind of groups. You have different kinds of reputation. And so you have, for example, a world of frog Twitter. And, is someone a respectable, experienced? Is he a giant among the frogs? He should have a frog check. You should have a frog check, right? And you're an official frog. Someone does not want to see frog posts. They should not see frog posts by anyone that has a frog check. That is their prerogative to live in darkness and safety. Safety, very important. Could say, is Twitter, let's say I want medical advice.
Yes.
Okay, well, if I have an MD, should I have a check saying I'm a real MD? You don't want to believe real MDs. Like, all of this stuff could be, there's so much, basically.
Yes.
Twitter could become, the certifier of every kind of reputation in society.
Yes.
It could basically be that, if I'm looking for a doctor and all the doctors are on Twitter and they have MDs, how do I find this person? How do I find an MD? And it could be the issuer of formal credentials for everything, not just journalism. And so, there's a kind of, a PhD. Perhaps I have a check for being a PhD. This system of justice, so-called. I remember long ago I used to browse when this sort of thing, started to happen. I would browse Twitter, and it was like you were living in the French Revolution or something, where suddenly you'd had this place of speech, and then you had unexplained disappearances without trials. It's like basically government by death squad.
Yeah, Elon has not stopped that. And look, I agree with you mainly, except I should say Machiavelli has these famous phrases about how the king should be equivalent of ancient tyrant, the champion of the people against the nobility. And I think maybe Elon imagines himself as a kind of, he is inspired by example of Trump. Maybe he can pull it off. Maybe, as you say, he will fail. He certainly, with his decision today to limit the amounts of tweets people view, he seems to have the same Silizog Valley disease.
No, it's just strange when you see kind of strange foibles in public. The king has to have baraka. He has to have presence. Everything the king does has to seem as if it is done by God. The king is not king. The king is not actually in charge. He is God's instrument on earth, or God's instrument on Twitter. And, if you want to say, should the king do this, you should ask, would God do this? Yes. And, I don't think God would limit the number of tweets you can view or whatever, this strange thing. It just sort of shows, it shows that he has a kind of external fixation in a way.
Yes.
Like he should really, to be sort of kind of the social lord. I mean, let someone else, there's so many business guys, in this town. Hire a business guy to do the business, but be the king of the society.
Yes,
you must understand the society. You must feel the society in your bones. And the truth is, the king is, yes, he's the champion of, he protects the people against the nobility. He also has to protect the nobility. He protects everyone. And so to say, to go to war against the blue cheka by taking away their checks is just, this is not how you master the nobility. You have to make them serve you and love you.
Look, yes, he has many problems. I agree with you, including, again, I repeat, he continues part of the old censorship regime, which is very unfortunate. I don't think he himself does it, but he's outsourced it to bad people. But
it's about more than Twitter in a way, because it shows the negative vision of these people. And they basically say, I don't want to be governed in this way. I don't want to be governed by, I cannot insult the blue cheka, this sort of reign of tyranny of these pompous journalists who run away from every fight, and then call their thugs, to come and kill you in the night. This is terrible. But the thing is that, to have only a negative vision of government is not enough. It's not, you don't sort of feel the mandate of heaven when you do that. You need a positive vision of how to govern. And what I don't feel in the new Twitter regime is that positive vision. And in the absence of the positive vision, the old thing will reassert itself. Yes. He can't be watchful of the whole, trust and safety secret police at all times. He needs to... the secret police is eternal. Every society has a secret police.
I agree with you, Elon making many mistakes, and since Trump was, at least they can plausibly claim that they are mobilizing the people against the nobility in typical old demagogue style. And we were going to talk this on this show, Molbag, on next segment maybe, but how there are many people, I think, who imagine themselves the same way, but are not capable even close of doing that. If you don't mind, let me change subject quickly, because I've kept you on this one segment quite a long time. You mentioned your DAS you made and levels of